Hey, what's up guys? CJ coming back to you guys here today. Inside on the trainer. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that actually. The difference between riding inside on a trainer and riding outside on the road and our power differences. You know, there's a lot of talk about this, a lot of talk about the difference between riding inside versus riding outside. And I think there's a lot of confusion about that. So hopefully we can get some answers. Let me turn on my fan first and I'll get back to you. Nothing too crazy here today on the trainer. I'm really just 1 hour endurance ride. I think no more than 70% of my FTP. So hopefully that goes well, getting after it. I think we need to really focus in here and look at the reality of this, okay? First things first, why is it so hard to ride inside on the trainer? I don't know if I have the answer to that necessarily, but yeah, it sucks, it hurts. It's not riding outside, and I think a lot of us ride our bike because we enjoy that. We enjoy the movement, the wind in our hair, or the lack thereof. That's why I got this thing. So yeah, riding outside might just be easier because of, psychologically it is easier to do. It's kind of a given. There are some people that like riding inside, and hey man, more power to you. I don't. I would much rather go outside. I'd much rather be riding, you know, on the road, riding my bike for real, rather than being in this static trainer. You do read a lot of information, and you hear a lot of information. There's even here on YouTube, on very famous YouTube channels, talking about, you know, taking watts off of your indoor training versus outdoor training, because you know, 1 hour on the indoor trainer is like an hour and a half outside. I'll give it to you straight, that's just a lie. It really is. Now, as mentioned, is it harder to ride inside on a trainer? Mentally, yes, and I will talk about that a little bit later, about why is that so hard. But when it comes down to looking at watts and the amount of power that you can produce, it should be the same. Let me break this down even further though. There's probably two ways that the majority of us ride an indoor trainer. First way, maybe you just ride, no power meter, you just go out, look at it for time, for heart rate, so on and so forth. This is great, builds an aerobic base. We're probably not gonna be doing much for intervals in this area. You could be doing some hit intensities or something like that according to heart rate, but nothing in regard to your FTP, okay? And that's often what we talk about when it comes to riding on the trainer. Why do I produce less power in comparison to riding outside? That's the first way. You're probably gonna ride on an indoor trainer, static bike, maybe at the gym, or something like that. The second way, maybe on that old school trainer, the dumb trainer that we call it sometimes now, and then the new smart trainers. That's what I want to go into. That's what I want to break this video down even further and talk about. Those individuals that are riding on their bike, on this indoor trainer, typically with their power meter on their bike. That's a one system power, right? They have one power reading. The other one is on the smart trainer. Maybe they have their outdoor bike that they put on the trainer, but they use the trainer's power, the smart trainer power. And that's a 2-power system. It's a little bit different, but I will talk about it. On your indoor trainer, 1 power source system. You're on your bike, you ride with that same power meter outside as riding inside. That's my setup. I ride an old dumb trainer because I don't ride it that often. It's actually not even mine, it's borrowed. And I use my bike with my pedal sourced power meter. And it reads power inside just like it reads power outside. Looking at this one source power meter, there should be no difference in my FTP. If I can produce 300 watts for 20 minutes outside, I should be able to produce 300 watts for 20 minutes inside with that same power meter, that same source on that same bike. This is where it gets complicated. The complication lies with it's not the same. Reason being is because mechanically, I am stationary on this trainer, meaning my back wheels are locked in. Wheels, my back wheel. My back wheel is locked in, right? I cannot grab my handlebars. I can't stand up and really dig in. I can't shift from side to side. Mechanically, the work is different, right? And for some people, that feels harder, right? So mentally, as well as mechanically, it's not the same. Outside, I have more of a breeze coming at me. Here I'm stationary. I have to use that fan in front of me in order to get a little bit of relief from the heat that I'm producing by metabolizing fuels, right? So that's the difference. Not that I can't produce that power, it's that theoretically they are different. They're not the same, okay? However, theoretically, with that same power meter, I should be able to produce the same amount of power inside as I produce outside. That is a given. The point that a lot of people bring up in this argument is when I ride outside, I can coast. Well, yeah, that's kind of true. Maybe you can freewheel a little bit, but your power meter is still registering 0 at that moment. So your average power is still going to be less. That's going to make it lower. So they say, well, no, because I'm pedaling harder and it tires me out sooner, and then I can't produce power for longer. Well, true. And that means that we could look at the difference to somebody riding outside in a hilly surface versus somebody riding outside in a flat surface. I could produce 300 watts for 20 minutes in a more inclined scenario, in comparison to me trying to produce 300 watts in a flat-like scenario. I may not be trained in order to produce 300 watts on a flat surface just yet, but it's in my body, it's within my reach of doing that. Mechanically, maybe you can't move side to side. Mentally, it might be harder because you don't have the wind in your face. And thirdly, maybe you're just not trained in that specific scenario. That's how we can look at that. If you're using just one power source, there should be no difference. It's one of those three things. The other scenario is really interesting. This is a 2-power system, okay? So maybe you ride your outdoor bike outside, and maybe you ride your inside bike on your trainer, whatever it is, right? You have 2 power sources, let's put it that way. You have power outside, and you have power inside. Now, here, you could see a difference. Why? Well, the difference in the power meters, for one, right? There could be difference within those power meters, but it's due to the power meter, okay? Now, looking at the science here and trusting in the technology, we have to understand that these things are fairly precise in their measurements, okay? We're talking about 1 to 3% of difference. So if I'm at 100 watts, the other power meter might be at 103. Yes, at 200 watts, it may be at 206, for instance. At 300, okay, now we're even higher, 309, right? But by doing so, that's not that big of a difference, right? We're talking about minuscule percentages here when it comes to the differences between 2 power meter sources. Now, I will give you this. You have to calibrate all these power meters. All these power meters have to be in the correct conditions, right? Each power meter source, or each source of power, has its own way of calibration. So, following calibration correctly, your power meters between 2 sources really shouldn't be that far off. If they are, double check them, right? recheck them, recalibrate them, and just make sure you have the right calibration for each power meter. So, to conclude, the difference between training indoors and training outdoors is really due to probably three things. One of them, mechanically, you can't move side to side, okay? You can't pull down on those drop bars and really dig in for power, right? The second thing is, well, you don't have psychologically everything coming at you. You don't have the wind coming at you. You don't have any of those types of scenarios. Riding outside, why a lot of us ride our bike, you don't have that. The third way is that maybe I'm just not trained on the bike yet, and maybe I'm not accustomed to that type of training just yet. So the next time somebody tells you that riding inside for an hour is like riding for an hour and a half outside, I would just tell them that that's gibberish. That's not correct. That's a lie. Or if you're doing intervals inside, take 30 watts off of your power, and that should be the wattage that you're shooting for. Same thing, guys. That's gibberish. It's a bunch of rubbish. Don't believe it, okay? Does it suck to ride on the indoor trainer? Damn right it does. Would I rather be riding outside? Yes, I would. But when somebody tells you to train with 30 watts less, or that an hour is like an hour and a half, that is just outright ridiculous. Don't believe it, don't do it. Training inside sucks, we know that. Training outside is so much more fun. That's typically why we ride a bike. But there is no difference, especially if you use one power source, and even to that case, if you use two power sources. There shouldn't be a lot of difference between those two power sources. Maybe 10 to 15 watts max. Hopefully that helped. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't follow me, please do so. Click that little bell icon. It'll let you know when everything comes up. Now, if you don't mind, I'm gonna finish this workout. Until next time. Another thing that sucks about riding inside is that I'm literally in my living room. Like, I'm thinking right now, I have 3 minutes to go. I want to sit down on the couch. What am I going to have for dinner? What do I have to do tomorrow for work? So I'm thinking about other things as well. On the bike, I just don't do that. So, another thing to put in the mental category there. It's maybe another reason why the trainer might be so hard for you. Just another tidbit.